Hey, Laurel.
Hey, Jessa.
Who's our guest today?
Today we have Amber Sutter of Amber Sutter Coaching. We're thrilled to have you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for the opportunity to connect and share and play.
Yeah, we'll see where this goes. And we met you, Amber, through a mutual friend, one of my besties, Brian Carpenter, the craft beer CPA at Levitax. He reached out to me and was like, "You have to meet Amber." I think in a couple weeks, we met you at Kensington Brewery, and I sat down next to you, and it was like pretty magical connection. We have a lot in common.
Yeah.
And
goosebumps. I remember.
it was pretty amazing. For example, like I was telling you about my story where like owls are guiding me, and you're like, "Yep, they're outside my window. I hear them. They're here for you." And that was a year ago, I think at the end of October, maybe early November. And so here we are a year later, finally getting to share all the things.
Yeah, actually what was even more distinct that stands out in my memory is I will on occasion hear owls in my neighborhood at night. But the day that I met you, I woke up to owls at 5:30 in the morning. And that was the first time the owls woke me up. And I was like, oh, this is like so serendipitous. So the magic of the universe just pulled us together in that way.
Absolutely. I've got chills on my shoulders because I remember feeling the chills when we were talking about it. And it's been great. I've been following you on Instagram. For our listeners, you should follow Amber Sutter Coaching on Instagram because you get right to the point, very clear messaging. I hear your messages. They come through loud and clear to me. So I'm really excited to share all these things. So before you started Amber Sutter Coaching, tell us what you did in life, like your background, and then why you decided to become a woman-owned business and launch your career in coaching.
Yeah, absolutely. So how far should I go back?
I would say like a little bit before like a pivotal change.
Okay. So you can read more about my awakening, I call it my story, on my website. But I think what's important to share is that I came from a childhood upbringing that didn't have much stability. And so as I was finding my way in the world, I very early on thought, I don't want to be my parents. They were both addicts. They still are. And so I wanted to be smart and steady and a somebody. And that had me start my career as an accountant. And somehow, some way, I haven't done accounting for a long time, but I still am on the fringes of accounting. So let me connect the dots. Really early on, I did 2 tax busy seasons. I'm like, this is horrible. It's stealing my thunder. I don't like it. I started going to hot yoga because I was like, if I'm not an accountant, who am I going to be? And when I got in hot yoga, it was like a place and a space where I think my soul started speaking, right? The ego quieted down and I got more meditative and reflective and looked within. That brought me to move from the Bay Area and the rat race of the Silicon Valley, San Diego, a little slower roll, nice. And I went to the University of San Diego to do my master's in leadership in souls, which connected me to my soul even more. Souls is an acronym for the School of Leadership and Education Sciences, and it was very much like an inner approach. Who are you? How does your voice get heard? How does it not get heard? What do you value? Taking an ethics class where I wrote my personal mission statement, really kind of more and more understanding who I was. So in my pursuit of understanding myself, I've always been working with the people, went through different iterations, serving people in the accounting profession, training them, recruiting them, onboarding them, eventually decided to become a professional coach about 7 years ago, had my own practice. It was wonderful. Life was easy, lots of space. My ego seduced me to become an internal coach for a Big 4 accounting firm. It was an amazing experience. I learned a lot. And one of the things I learned was I didn't like the kind of coaching that they did. So it's great. One of the largest professional service providers is providing coaching to their employees. But for me, what I like to do when I coach people is work with a very small tribe for a long, extended period of time. And that kind of coaching engagement and structure wasn't there. So ultimately, created my own practice for honoring like what is the way and the structure that I show up best, like how am I most helpful and valuable to my clients, and trusting that the right clients will continue to find me again and again, and they do.
Absolutely. I love that. Obviously, I'm a USD alum, so I get really excited when I meet people that have gone through undergrad or masters at University of San Diego. It resonates strongly with me when you're like, I did my personal mission statement. I did that, I would say probably like 5 or 6 years ago, and I included it as part of my resume when I was applying for jobs. And consistently over time, my interviewees would say, I've never seen this before. I've never seen somebody lay out what their personal mission, vision, values, and their strategic plan is so that you can see how it aligns with your employer. And I've just carried that with me ever since. So in that vein, what are your personal core values and how do they relate to align with Amber Sutter coaching values?
Yeah. Well, I'd first start off with my mission. So my mission is to be a voice for new levels of consciousness. And that to me guides me more than anything, right? Like part of that entails owning that my voice is a force. I think when I was younger, that was a lot to be with, right? Like I just say it and I call it like I see it. And that's good, but it can be disruptive, right? Like I've been on boards where, the board will have a side chatter conversation about something. And then when it comes to the meeting and someone needs to be the truth teller, all the other board members are like looking at me. But consciousness is an awakening. It's awakening people as a coach to their own inner truth. It's awakening a group to like the truth of a system. And whatever I'm up to, I think that's really important. I mean, I highly value love. I love people. I love on people. I love myself. I get other people to love themselves. But that really being a voice and really promoting more awareness of oneself and the systems and beliefs that they hold, I think is really where that's my anchor for everything flows from there.
Yeah, that resonates with us. We are a big fan of conscious entrepreneurs that know what the core is, lead from the core and the light, and help awaken people to the self-awareness that can really just free them and set them free. So you identify as a coach, and people have asked, when do I hire a life coach? When do I hire a business coach? What is your definition of coaching and when people should hire you and why?
Yeah. So, coaching as a profession, number one, it's nascent. It's a young profession, and not a lot of consumers, like if they're going to hire a coach, really understand that, well, A, what is coaching? And B, what does a coach do to credentialize themselves or not? So, I come from being a CPA world, right? I actually used to be a learning and development manager where I made sure everyone got licensed and everyone kept their license. And unbeknownst to the general public, I think they don't realize coaching has a credentialing process as well. So I'm credentialed by the International Coach Federation, which means that I have gone through coach training that has had to been pre-approved. I've had somebody supervise my work and listen to my calls and am evaluating me on core competencies. And then also, I have to do continuing education and continue to learn and grow. And so I share that because I think if you're going to hire a coach, I would advocate that you hire a quote unquote certified real coach, because there's a lot of people that say that they're doing coaching, but maybe they've actually never done any professional coach training. Maybe they went for a weekend seminar and they've never actually heard someone listen to their work. And I know it's my bias, right? I know I have a hard bias, and I know that there's also like this demographic of OG coaches that like have been coaching forever and they're awesome. But I also think they do a disservice to coaching as a profession by being, I'm going to say, lazy and not just going and getting the certification that they could easily do. Because if we're really going to make coaching understood and valued in the world, we need to build that as a credential. So coming from, well, what is an ICF credentialed coach? We would define that as somebody who co-creates with the client to maximize their personal and professional potential. When I coach, I assume my client is the expert. So when I enrolled in coach training, I thought I was going to be giving a lot of advice. Wrong. I'm like, wait a minute, they're going to pay me like hundreds and thousands of dollars for me to ask them questions? That's really weird. But it really is. A lot of what I do as coach is deep inquiry, holding space and not being almost in a way scared for the client to bring their truth and uncover their truth. Because the more and more I've coached, the more I want to go in. Sometimes I've learned now I actually have to slow down and not move it too fast, because you get to see people really quickly. But then there's also is a piece to it that's helping them also cultivate insight, but then pairing that with action. So in comparison to therapy, which is another great, resource in the world, therapy is like, where is someone today, and kind of looking to the past, how did it come to be, and a lot of conversation and not as much, let me identify action when I'm in therapy. Maybe there's cognitive behavioral therapy that does that. But coaching is, where am I today? Where do I want to be? And how do I close the gap? We uncover insights, we pair it with action, manage progress and accountability, but it's all, what does the client really want out of life, and how are they getting in their own way or not?
Yeah, we at A Stellar Co do not identify as a coach. We're not credentialed, we're not certified by the same organization that you are. And I think that's a fundamental distinction. Even though we align and we have complementary services and our mission and vision are very, very similar, yeah, we don't go over to people and go, we're a coach, because we're not credentialed. We haven't gone through those trainings. And we absolutely respect the industry. So tell us, who are your ideal clients? Like what industries, what sectors, etc.?
Yeah, so it's a great question. It's kind of a funny question, because through my own awakening, I had this really years ago, this intuitive hit that said, be a CPA who works with hearts and not numbers. And I'm like, say what? Like, what does that even look like? What does that mean? I don't know. It's something that comes up in yoga. And I've learned, don't question the messages, just receive them. So I was kind of doing that thing for a while and really thinking and believing, like, let me support CPAs with their heart. Let me support CPAs with their heart. And then I hit a point where it felt maybe that was too restrictive, right? That there's something broader. And then the paradox is the majority of clients that are attracted to me, because I try not to fish. I just, sit back and wait for the right people to show up in a very intense spiritual way. But I do primarily work with CPAs. I think that the common thread is there's like more of a psychographic. So it doesn't matter what they're doing as an accountant. It doesn't matter the size of the firm that they're in, or if they're in industry. There's some healing work to do. There's some helping them to realize that they're more than their performance and their achievements. There's helping them to feel their feelings, because they've probably been workaholism, right? Just like haven't felt their feelings in a while. And it's, there's also a lot of people, they're just so oriented to service, right? Like they're in a professional service industry. They're trying to be of service. And at the same time, there's in the industry, and I think business in general, they're realizing like they can't just do the compliance aspect of the business. They want to do more. They want to be connected to their clients in more intimate ways. And there is more conversation going on in the profession of like, look, it's more than providing someone with a tax return. You need to be able to connect with your clients and talk about their hopes and their dreams and their business. And CPAs aren't traditionally trained in that way, right? Like I did an accounting degree. I've done the CPA exam. In actually the California state, they specifically forbid For your continuing education, that personal development does not count. But the irony is, like, personal development is where it's at, right? Like, the more they develop themselves, the better they are at their work, the more sustainable they are, the more effective they are. So I'm the one that goes to the, government relations and says, hey, we need to change this. We need to, like, strike this out. Tell me how we can do that. But that's how their current state of the world is.
So you've mentioned there's these constraints around the CPA profession in general, from the compliance arena, as well as when you get certified, there's no professional development, continuing education that counts towards their certification. What are some of the other challenges in the industry? Specifically, when we first met, you blew my mind by saying the billable hour is spiritual prostitution. That has never left me. That's how I felt. I came from the environmental consulting industry, where timekeeping on a 15-minute increment, and utilization rates need to be above 80%. Plus, you need to market all this to bring in the revenue. And so how do you perform, market, sell, and yet still have personal time to take care of yourself and show up? And I imagine that the CPA world and the clients that you serve are under similar duress.
Yeah, so I think I want to respond to two elements of that. Constraints and then billable hour, which is always fun for me to bite into. So I think if we take a really big step back, and this is something I got from the University of San Diego, the balcony perspective, right? Imagine you're in a drone and you just really are pulling back and you're looking on the broader context of where we find ourselves we're on a team, in an organization, and the economy as a whole. We're living in an era where expertise has diminishing returns. Right? So whether you're an accountant, you're an attorney, you're a consultant, right? In that paradigm, the more you know, the more valuable you are. And billable hour, okay, so the more experience I have, the higher my bill rate. But what was going on is the world is now faced with these problems for which solutions don't exist. And so it's how can you, years ago in the accounting world, well, not so many years ago, it's Bitcoin. I don't know what a cryptocurrency is. I don't know how to track it. I don't know how to measure it. I don't know how to tax it. The IRS was sending people notices. It was we're going to tax your Bitcoin. Meanwhile, we don't know how. And so, all these experts in the field are well, do we treat it like a livestock? This might be a similar treatment. This is literally what's going on. And so how do you be an expert on a problem that has never, ever existed? So that's a huge constraint. And that's where one of my dreams is to marry coaching competencies with these advisors. I call it becoming a conscious business advisor. Because if we teach coaching skills, powerful questioning, active listening, which is listening to someone's emotion. Is it high? Is it low? Is there, clients might come to my calls with they're just fast. And I know they're wound up really, really, really tightly, right? And teaching them these competencies of coaching so that they can actually ask the broader, powerful questions and create a space of inquiry. But the inquiry and unknown is not something that's highly valued for a lot of people that have been paid to be experts. Then to the billable hour, I mean, the challenge with it there is that there's a paradigm of what is exactly valuable, and that is churning out expertise. And that's not necessarily being tied to your computer, which, by the way, I spoke with a woman who does a lot of coaching in the legal profession, and she was telling me about this technology that they have that they initially made for people taking tests online. And so if your eyes leave the screen, it will lock it out because they're afraid that you're looking down at something. You're a student now in college taking your courses through Zoom and your professor's administering a final. Well, you need to just sit there and type so that, but if you look away, you're cheating. And she's told me that they're using that in the legal field. And if anytime somebody looks away, they're non-billable. That I mean, you want to talk about some prostitution going on? Can I have a bio break? I mean, for me, like, I look out the window when I talk to clients and I watch a hawk fly by and I'm like, oh, there's something going on, I mean, I think it was Albert Einstein who said, I think 99 times and I find nothing, and I swim in silence and I find the solution. I mean, there's a reason why the professional services joke that they want to bill for their time in the shower, because when they actually step away from the problem, that's when the best answers come. So I just don't really see any professional services, whether it's accounting, engineering, law, whatever, really untapping so much more until that billable hour has been retired. That's got to go if we want to bring the full expression of humanity, if we want to unleash creativity to solve problems that have never existed before.
Well, Laurel and I go back and forth because after she, you had mentioned that when we met with you, Laurel's like, that's it. We don't believe in the billable hour. And I'm like, wait. I still believe in it. I get it. Like, I get the philosophy and the value to not assign a value to your hour and your expertise. But I'm like, I'm moving closer and closer to where you guys are. And my thing with the billable hour, well, first of all, the looking at the screen thing, that is insane. And I was just talking to someone earlier this week because I've been getting migraines, and they're like, oh, you need to do the 20-20-20, where you look away from your screen every 20 minutes for 20 seconds to at least 20 feet away. And that's been like every optometrist ever. So the fact that there's this software that is just, it's like a Black Mirror episode. So anyway, that aside, the billable hour, like, you're incentivized to take longer.
Yeah.
And that's what I don't understand. And even if maybe you build a bigger team, but you're incentivized to bill as many hours as you can, as long as you can. And then that does such a disservice to the client and to what you're trying to achieve. And so, like, so many, law, accounting, it's such a tradition. And I think it's going to be really difficult for people to kind of break the mold and come out of that. But I think the ones who do are going to be seen as like the innovators and leaders in the field, and are going to get a leg up in the industry as soon as those companies can make the jump and get out of that mindset. It's like getting out of the 9-to-5 mindset. You have to be chained to a desk in a room with the same people 9 to 5 every day. And now we're learning you can work on and off throughout the day based on when your energy is peaking and dipping. And we were just talking on a podcast earlier this week with someone, and she founded her business when she was in this deep meditation. And she's like, it just came to me and everything lined up. And she started a successful business a year and a half ago through her meditation. So anyway, I feel you.
To me, you pay for my judgment, not my stamina. And I felt like when I meditate, I get so much more done with so much less effort. Hence the title of this podcast, how can we do less and generate more? My key tip is meditation. We're seeing entrepreneurs, like Jessica said, launch businesses, and it was so clear. The message was so clear. What are some of the ways that you receive the clear messages about business and the next steps and where to go?
Yeah, it's really, for me, about where can I find moments that I can get my ego out, right? Like that incessant, we all define, I think, ego differently, but for me, it's like an incessant voice. It's comprised of shoulds, right? It's either me showing up in a way that I think gets me what I call ego snacks, like praise for an external validation. And when I'm really more connected and I'm able to hear my inner voice, when I'm able to experience what feels like a flash of lightning, energetic strikes me, and I just have a knowing. Personal activities or things like yoga, time with friends, and specific friends I call soul food often, which are coach type people that are willing to have the deepest depths of conversations. I do a lot of coach training, partly because I like want to master my craft, but I want to master my own inner world. So it's lots of deep inquiry, lots of deep reflection. And I really sense too, what's coming up for me also is just kind of like a general thing that I heard about recently that I thought was really helpful was it was like really reducing the amount of social media. And like, I like social media. Like LinkedIn has been good to me. I've connected with amazing people across the US I would have never connected with otherwise. I like Instagram. I follow some like really like you can really filter and follow some cool stuff. Like right now I don't want to go on Facebook because everyone wants to talk politics. And I'm like, just want to see a picture of your kids and your dog, right? But at the same time, that has like meta narratives running, and that I like that frames these social constructs of who I should be or who I shouldn't be in the world. And the more I can get all of that out, like the more important the inner voice and the inner work is.
Yes, I think that we were just talking about social media influences on our podcast interview with XQ Innovation, offline and online. And one of the strategies that I employed that people might find helpful is I only fill my Instagram with accounts of happy women dancing. Nice. So when I open up my Instagram, it's all sorts of just beautiful people expressing themselves, not to impress anyone. Like some of these accounts are like, I don't impress, I just express. And that encourages me to be like, oh, I feel so good. Like I'm not jealous. I'm not envious. It's not my ego snack. I'm not a snackadactyl out there like chewing up all this info. I feel empowered and excited to really move and like enjoy myself. I think it's possible.
And that when I hear that is like, you know what moves you, like you know what empowers you, and you're not relating to it like in an unhealthy way. And I think you probably had to do some of that quieting the outside to get attuned to what really moves the needle for you.
And we were talking about this recently, because of The Social Dilemma on Netflix. Have you seen that yet?
Not yet.
I think given what you're talking about, it'd be worth your time. And when we're talking about social media, I'm guilty. I'm like the worst. I'm getting better, but I love following therapy accounts on Instagram. That is my favorite. But I think it's very telling when you go to the search bar, the explore, and what's targeted for you. That's like your world. And mine is all junk food. It's like all the new snacks. Like sometimes I screenshot it and I send it to my friends and I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is like in my psyche. This is what's going on.
Is it like your blind spots? It illuminates your blind spots or your shadows?
Yeah, it's my shadow work.
I'm gonna have to do that. I have to look at that.
Jessa stepping through her shadow away from the food snacks and to the other side of
I gotta get there. I had to stop following the it's not like the political accounts. Mine's like the junk food accounts where it's like, look at this cake and cookies. I'm like, I can't, no more, Jessa. I had a question for you, Amber, is, you're talking about this and you primarily work with CPAs. And so, the challenges you talk about are things that we all deal with. And so who could benefit from having a coach? Like at what point in your life or role in your career or where you're at, like what type of person should be considering hiring a coach?
Yeah, it's a great question. And first I want to say, you said you follow therapists. Shout out to holistic psychologists. That's like one of my faves. She's amazing.
Yes, they got the new self-healers journals out today.
Oh, really? Nice. Yeah. Amazing.
I love
cool
her.
Stuff. No, there's some wisdom, some gems on that. So like readiness for coaching. So usually coaching is very, very helpful at transitions in life, right? A transition could be like, I'm attuned to, I need a transition, right? Like the way of life is not working. Like the job that I have is not working. It could be, I have a great job, all the money in the bank, my calendar's full and my soul is empty. I need to make a shift. Or I recently became a parent and how do I have this new sense of self or balance, if people want to call it. I want to become more. I want to become happier. I want to get promoted. Like there's usually some form of life transition that makes someone eager to learn, wanting to do the work. And I would tell people, if you're going to hire a coach, I mean, you can go for a credentialed coach or not, but I think there's also the piece of kind of really just understanding what that coach's sweet spot is. So I tell people, if you want to come work with me because you want a promotion and like that's all that's important to you, like I'm not your person. I want to go into the deepest stuff, as deep as you'll go and as far back as you'll go, because that is where, yeah, we'll get the promotion and you'll make more money. That's the booby prize. Like the real awesome value is the transformation that comes along with it. But not everybody wants that, right? Like if they hired me 7 years ago, I'm like, okay, what's your goal? I'm going to help you get there. And like that's what I thought was the value. And the other thing is, if somebody really wants to hire a coach too, is to find somebody that they really completely vibe with. Like I encourage people, talk to a few coaches, get to know them. Like you're going to want it to be a space that you can come and talk about whatever, right? Whatever's going on in your life, whatever's going on. I have a challenge in the workplace. I'm having a trouble getting along with my significant other. I said that I wanted to make this money, or I wanted to work these many hours and I'm not doing it. Like, you know, being accountable for what you're doing or not doing, and not being afraid to just say that. Coaching really should be a growth zone, not a performance zone. So, you know, if you say, hey, I want to do these 10 things and you don't do them in between your coaching calls, it's not that coach is going to be there to flunk you out of the experience. It's going to be like, well, why? Right? I know for me, I used to have this, I was doing a lot of freelance writing and I would write for different things. And it's like, well, now that I actually notice, why is it that I always make up a story that I don't have time to write this article? It's not that I don't have time. What was really going on was it felt scary to me to publish original thought, put it out in the world, and then, you know, how might the trolls respond to it? Because my view of the accounting profession is very much challenging and very much, I would say, more often provocative. Like I once wrote an article numerous years ago called "Retiring the Billable Hour as a Measure of Performance," and literally got people that wrote me and was like, will you reconsider your position because this billable hour is really valuable? And I'm like, no, I won't. Like I have a position, you know, this is how I feel about it, but I'm glad you feel like you can control me. It was interesting.
And as you explain this, this sounds so similar to therapy. And so what's the difference between coaching and therapy?
Yeah, it's a great question. And that I'll just do another shameless plug of why you want a really trained coach, because if a coach is trained and being able to distinguish when does a person need coaching and when do they need therapy. And I'm a total disservice to a client if what they really need is a therapeutic experience and I'm coaching them. So therapy they would say, like I used to be afraid of the word healing because it's like, well, therapy's healing and coaching's not. And now I'd say, F that, like I'm a healer, you know, like I really work and help people in their healing experience. But therapy would, I'd say, more inclination to trauma. You know, if I have a client that's really stuck and like they're here and they say they want to be here and they're not making forward progress that they decide is right for them, that's going to be more therapeutic in nature. Sometimes I have clients that are working with a therapist. I mean, that's part of my training and my intake is to ask, are you working with a therapist? Are you on medication? What does that look like? So in therapy, they might do a lot more of the time orientation to the past and understanding of themselves. And then they come to coaching. It's like, well, this is what I learned in therapy. This is how I see it showing up in the workplace. This is where I'm struggling with my goal because of this. And so it's back to my ideal clients, people who want to do the work to become a better version of themselves.
Yeah, that's clear. Thank you. I get that. So it's like therapy is doing the digging and like the soul searching, like why am I not able to get to where I want to be? And then you come in as a coach and help them get to where they want to be, like coach them along that path. But they have the self-awareness and like knowledge now of maybe triggers or things that are holding them back already.
Yeah, I mean, maybe as like a metaphor, I talk about consciousness and performance as an iceberg. So in the day-to-day business world, HR is only looking at the top of the iceberg. What did somebody do or not do, right? And then we're going to promote them or not based on just what we can see. But that's all informed by everything below the surface, right? Somebody's hopes, dreams, fears. And I'd say therapy is really good at excavating the things that people don't even know are there. Coaching does that too. Believe me, like it really pulls stuff out, especially when I do work to help them understand like their patterns of thinking and feeling. But I think that therapy can unlock a lot of stuff that their psyche has, like, they don't even know pushed away, right? There's one thing to say, hey, I had a painful event and it's hard for me to be with and feel and think about it, versus like, I don't even know that there's something way down below the surface.
That's really helpful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I love the metaphor.
Thanks. A little basic, but it works.
No.
I think there are many people out there that might not know that something is wrong. So earlier you said, when should I hire a coach? And one of your points was, well, if the job isn't working for them. I was in a lot of jobs that I didn't know weren't working for me. I just thought that the struggle and the fight and the frustrations was how it's supposed to be when you're in a corporate world, and that's how you earn your stripes and grow up the corporate ladder and become an effective executive leader. So I thought that was like my boot camp, and I'm going to tough it out. Like I'm in a really hard NFL football game. I'm going to fight and push and get through it, keeping on the train of metaphors here. And then I sought the cognitive behavioral therapy where we did that bit of work, and I realized, the habitual traumatic events and habitual trauma that's creating these habitual, emotional outbursts or whatever, that's actually not normal. That's actually not the best version of myself, and that's not supposed to really be happening if you're a truly whole, healthy individual. And then learning through our advisory board, who are coaches, that here's where your full potential could be expressed, Laurel. Mm-hmm. Like you're meant to be a decision maker, an entrepreneur, a business owner, a pioneer, a driver, these things. I was like, oh. And we laugh about it on our last podcast because it's like I needed two white dudes to give me permission to do something. And then once I did it, it was like very eye-opening. And I encourage people, if you're in these habits and they feel normal to you, maybe go seek a coach for a sounding board to see like, is this your best life? Really? Like, is this fight that you're fighting? Is that really the fight you want to be fighting?
Yeah. I mean, this is where I'd give a, shout out to COVID, because what I think COVID has really done is a lot of people were on the proverbial hamster wheel, going, doing, achieving, performing, right? The next deadline, the next cycle of life. And then COVID thrust all of us off of it in some way, right? Like I'm 43. It's the first time I went to the grocery store and I couldn't buy flour. Like somewhere in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I'm like, that's really weird, And people that have kids ages K through 12 and they're at home and you have no childcare and no school, like thrust off the hamster wheel. All of a sudden you're working from home and like you've got, you walk out your door, you don't have a commute and there's your spouse. Like, what do you want for dinner in your space? Like we've all in our own way been thrust. And then what I'm noticing, like now with people that are interested in coaching, is that like they were dazed and confused for a hot minute. And now they're like, I don't want to get back on that wheel. I don't want to get back on that wheel. And so it has created an opening. And in your story, like, I'd be curious, like, you were on your wheel, and then there was something that you're like, something is not working. Like, if I'm honest with myself, something's not working, and I'm willing to like go talk to someone and do something about it. And sometimes we know something is not working and we choose to just not deal with it. Like, I had a coach, by the way. It's a question I would always ask a prospective coach is, tell me about your own work with a coach. Because if I don't have my own coach, I don't have my stuff worked out, and I can't be like a shiny, clean surface for clients. But I was working with my own coach, and it really kind of struck me that like I was unhappy in my marriage. I pretty much ended up firing that coach, which was nothing about her. It was because she was so good, and that was revealed to me, and I didn't want to deal with it. Like, I just wasn't ready to deal with it. And so it's okay, right? You don't have to do it. And there's times to like take things on, and there's times to like blow up aspects of your life. But then there's other times where it's like, no, maybe what you need to do is just keep going and going, but just don't lose sight. Like, put it on the shelf if you need to for a minute, but don't, I would just, who wants to live a life where they're like, hey, I never honored that truth that came up for me? That would be heartbreaking.
Yeah, the moment for me when I knew something was wrong is that I just didn't love myself, and I was crying almost all the time. And I've had a phenomenal spiritual awakening. I'm so grateful. Like you said, you just want to wake people up. I'm so grateful because meeting Jessa was an excellent step in that direction. And she has been an incredible guide on that path. And of course, I have so many opportunities just by me being who I am. I've got functional medicine doctors and advisors and coaches. I mean, a wealth of opportunity at my door. And I just said, I'm a great learner. Someone's got to have a better answer for me. Let's go study. And since then, I've been studying myself, and it's phenomenal. Are there resources for individuals who don't have access or the opportunities at their door, like someone like we do? We have access to professional services and resources. Are there free resources for low-income populations who might be struggling that need attention?
Yeah, so I want to just kind of hook into one piece you said and then go to that where you said something about I could see myself, right? And it's interesting. I'm in a group now and learning, and we were talking about that human beings, like, we have the ability to understand and see ourselves being ourselves. Like, a cat doesn't know it's a cat. A dog doesn't know it's a dog. And what a gift and what a curse that is. So all of this like beauty is in how do you see yourself being yourself? So if you have no money, right, there's ways in that you can do that just in cultivating relationships. Like, I know in my world, my grandma helps me see me. Like, if I'm having a low in life, she reminds me, like, you always, whatever you set to achieve, you do it. Like, you've been this way since you were a child, and that's free and it's priceless. Something where I think you get a lot of bang for your buck. If people happen to be in San Diego, there is a conference called Leadership for Change. It's not a conference where you go in and someone lectures to you and is like, let me give you this theory. It's like a living laboratory where you get to, in large group, small group, and then examine groups that you choose, how you show up, how voices get heard. And it'll connect to what's going on in the world. Those themes will come in that space. And it is beautiful, disruptive, like amazing. Similar, there's the Landmark Forum. So Landmark Forum is worldwide. That, it's all about helping you understand, distinguish the way you've been being. And we all have filters in life that like really influence how we receive information and the interpretations we make up about it. And that will give you a distinctions of like how you start to see the filters that you put on in your meaning making system. Instagram, right? There's healthy ones. Maybe Jessa, can give us like holistic psychologist has been amazing. deep inquiry, whatever it gets you to quiet your mind. Meditation apps are free. Yoga on YouTube
I think that's
is free.
Yeah, I think a lot of people who have lost their jobs in COVID and are, just struggling to pay the rent and, just trying to deal with the fact that they're at home all the time, people all in their face. It's really helpful to know what free resources are available and what they can do to empower themselves with no money. I mean, meditation, getting quiet, looking inward, leadership for change, landmark forum, and all of these places. How do you best, I know you said yoga and I know you said meditation. What are some tools that you use specifically beyond your yoga practice? Like, are there meditation apps that you recommend that are free for people or easily accessible?
Not so much on meditation apps. I mean, I would actually just take it a step back and say, like, if I was a person who did not have money, but I had more of the currency of time, one of the first things I would tell someone in that position to do is egregious self-care. So what I know is, like, people might be like, hey, what I should be doing is like going online and applying to 500 jobs a day and all this stuff. But like, when they're in that scarcity mindset, like how they show up to an interview is like wacky, right? And they are like, I need this, I need this, I need this, versus like, I trust that the right opportunity is going to come to me. And I don't think you can get to that place of like trust and abundance mindset if you haven't been able to do some inner work and taking care of yourself. I mean, you have ample time to cook yourself healthy and delicious meals. You can go on a hike in nature. Like, these are just ideas because each person has to really distinguish like what fills me up emotionally. There's a group called the Energy Project, and they talk about 4 domains of energy: mental energy, how focused are we? Physical energy, which is often how we just relate to it. Are we eating enough, sleeping, all that? Are we exercising? But there's emotional energy, right? Like, am I getting easily triggered? Am I often upset and frustrated? And then spiritual, if I can distinguish how my contribution contributes to something greater. And I think people really like take care of your energy. Egregious self-care would be the top place to come from. And then from there, it's the doing. Because when you've taken care of yourself, like, your being when you show up to an interview is magical. That's captivating. That's going to sell someone on your expertise way more than a few bullet points on a piece of paper.
Is that how we do less and generate more?
Yes. Well, I would also add in like lots of doses of trust, right? Like, trust in yourself, trust in the abundance of the universe. I don't know. COVID forced me to I had a lot less childcare, and I've been blown away because I'm like, oh, I don't really have to work this hard. I had a story, and it's incrementally fewer and fewer hours and the same income.
That's rad. I really like that idea of that's how I feel too. I have a lot of work and a lot of projects on my plate, but when I make the space and the capacity to calm down and do nothing, it comes more and easier and more of the athletic flow state. Like, when I was an athlete, get into this flow state where I'm so laser focused that I can visualize the clear path to winning. In sports, it was like, oh, this is happening. I don't have to try because it just is.
Yeah.
And we can get there in all aspects of our life. It doesn't have to be sports. It doesn't have to be business. It can be all of that in one go.
Yeah.
Well, I think part of what's going on too is that, we all came up, like, you work hard. The harder you work is the more hours you put in. And that's how you get ahead in life. And, it's the quote American dream. And if you work hard enough, you're going to get all these things. And that's really what drives the traditional capitalist society, is all the worker bees putting in all the hours at the hourly wage. to generate all the wealth. And I think it really was highlighted again during COVID. It's like the people that are the backbone of to keep the economy going is who we rely on. We rely on the grocery stores, the delivery drivers, the all these day-to-day functions that are not traditionally celebrated. And it's like, we need this. The farmers, like, who are going out and generating the crops to put the flour on the shelf when it's not there. And then you have all these people who are able to sit back and they're able to work from home, and by them, I mean we too, and we're able to be safe and have that level of security. And I just think it's just something that's really like come to my mind and forefront just during the pandemic is the economic disparity and in opportunities. And Laurel, like you said, it's like we were in a position, just frankly being born white in America, where we have a leg up on most of the world already. And so these opportunities are easier for us to take advantage of and recognize. And for me, it's like, it's just me. I don't have, like any children or anybody to take care of other than my mutt dog, Roxy. But I'm like, she's a street dog. We'll be fine. So I can take risks and not a lot of people can. And so I just think it's something too. It's like how we treat our employees and the people that we work with. It's just a thought. It's just something that I've become more and more aware of.
Yeah, along those lines, very kind of parallel, reflective place I've been in is in the accounting world. It was probably like around, I want to say 2008, 2009, sustainability was a buzz. Like we're going to measure the triple bottom line, profit, people, and planet. And I'm like, where'd that go? Right. And I forgot about it, right? I've been in the business of people pretty much my whole career. And I listened to this other mind-blowing podcast that said, what if humans are the virus on the planet, right? Like, oh, we are killing Mother Earth. Like we can now see with COVID, like streams are clear again. And in India, they can see like the mountains that they haven't been able to see in a while. And I'm like, we need that triple bottom line again. Like we've been so focused on the wrong stuff. And again, it's hard, right? Like, how do you measure planet? How do you measure people? So when we can't figure it out, we just like allow ourselves to get distracted and to do something else.
Mm-hmm. I'm a sustainability professional, and in the environmental industry, in the environmental professional industry, the majority of interactions I'm having with them, we're all saying COVID is the most sustainable life that we're living. LA has cleaned up. You can see the air, you can see the mountains, you can see things. And it's so clear that it's signaling to the government that we need to invest in electric vehicles because that's the only way that we're going to fix our transportation system. And the way that we measure it needs to be affected. And, Jess and I started a Stellar Co. We were trying to understand what is our definition of sustainability because everybody has their own definition. I think it was like podcast episode 3 or 4 where we interviewed the USD sustainability director and we're like, what's your definition? And it's like, it's different to everybody. And I was telling Jess about the triple bottom line that came out in the 80s and how we can move that to the top. So it's the triple top line. So instead of waiting to measure the profit, we can measure the value we're generating at the top and contribute it up here. And then we get exposed to this whole nother world where it takes that to a whole nother level with a give back model. And then we all get together in this regenerative community and we're like, isn't it so silly that we're having to have a discussion about business for good? Shouldn't all businesses be for good? What happened? Like what happened? And we could go and talk about this forever and ever, amen. But there's a couple documentaries out there. One recently, Fishing with Dynamite, that really explains how our traditional form of capitalism went into short-term profit maximization for shareholders and how really it should be maximizing stakeholder value. And that is the movement that Jess and I are a part of. And it aligns so well with conscious entrepreneurship, bringing spirituality into the business, your whole self, your authentic self. And that's where I would say, hire a coach, hire a Stellar Co., hire these people. If you're like, that seems so complicated, I don't even understand, Like let us simplify it for you. And
Yeah.
COVID's like the time to do that in egregious self-care, like invest in those, exploring that. We're getting close to our end time here. Oh, my video jumped in and out. Why don't you finish the sentence for us, Amber? Wouldn't it be cool if
everyone had a coach, a professional coach? I mean, that would be amazing, you know, and the sooner someone does it in their life, the better. One of the things that I do is I have a tiered pricing schedule, because I know that, like, if you're earlier in your career, you can't afford to pay the amount that you can pay 20 years in. And I love working with someone earlier in their life, because they're so coachable. They're so wanting something more. And then they come back. That's the other cool thing, is like, they're like, oh, I'm up for like the next promotion, or I want to move, or something's going on, and they come back. But wouldn't it be cool if we were taught the value of inner work really early? Like, we got to understand our authentic self. We got to understand our unique contribution in the world. I mean, something that was just coming up for me in your share is like, accountants are trained to find fraud, and so many of them are living a fraudulent life. I mean, the disconnect between what they really want out of life and what they're actually doing with their life is huge. Maybe I'm going to teach a class on this. You're all fraudsters. I think I am. I'll send you guys an invite.
Absolutely.
I love it.
We have a couple women that we're working with right now that are doing exactly what you think would be cool. They're teaching you how to be their authentic selves. Like, it's never too early to start working on that. It's like 10 years old and up, like, let's start teaching what emotional intelligence is, empowered learning, and transform the education system to talk about the inner work and let it come out. So that said, Amber, do you want to give us your 3-point landing?
Yeah, remind me the 3-point landing.
Three key takeaways you want our audience to remember and walk away with.
Okay, so the first thing that I would do is, because I'm a coach, is I would tell the audience to stop right now and write down what their 3 key takeaways are. Because that's what's most important. Like, what is the value that they're taking from our conversation today? And then they can, we call it forward the action. What are you going to do about it, right? Are you going to print and post a message? Are you going to go sign up and, you know, do leadership for change? Like, what are you going to do? Because an idea is just an idea. Or as my PhD friends that were getting their doctorate, they called it mental masturbation. Like, you know, that's great, but like, let's do something, right? Move your life forward. So that would be one. The second is invest in you, right? Quiet out the story of who you should be, whether you took that from your parents who had, like, you know, the best, they were trying to lead you the right way, or a professor, you know, major in accounting, it's strong and steady, whatever. Like, do your inner work to understand who you are, and be of service to others. I mean, if somebody doesn't have a job right now, like, if somebody from USD or my world said, hey, I'm struggling right now, can we go to coffee? Yeah, I would, right? Because I want to be of service, and the world, we need to support each other right now. It's just a very odd time, but it's a beautiful time, because we're getting attuned to, like, what's not working, and that opens up possibility.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you for the opportunity. Like, I'm excited. Can we do another hour? Like, it's awesome. It energizes me, and I'm grateful.
Yeah, I mean, we've got from spiritual prostitution to mental masturbation. We could go on and on, right?
It's so me. You have to forgive me. I was raised by my dad, and my dad raised me from age 1 to 7, and my dad was a football and baseball coach. Like, my formative life is like literally on a football field and baseball field, and like walking through the boys' locker room. So my inner voice, it's kind of gritty.
I love it.
Love grit.
Very memorable.
All right. That's it for us. Send it, Jessa.